All right then, so now we have a little idea of how we're working with these Vue files, these individual components. Let's now look at how we can start to communicate data between two of them. So to show you this, I'm first going to make a couple of new components called All Friends and Online Friends. So imagine for a minute that this isn't actually a really crappy designed primitive website, and it is in fact a cool social network website. And for each user that visits the site, I want to display a list of all his or her friends in one component, and then I also want to display a list of only those friends who are currently online in a different component. So let's make those two components first of all. I'm going to right click source, go to new file and call this all friends.vue. Okay, so now let's create a template for this. And remember, this is going to list all of this person's friends. So let's give this a div inside here with an ID of all-friends. And then inside that div, we'll do a h2, which will say all friends like so. Okay, so that's our basic template so far. We'll also do a script tag and have our default object inside there. The name of this component is going to be all friends, and we'll also do our data property, which returns an empty object to begin with. We'll fill this in later and add some data for our friends to display. Okay, so we'll do an empty style tag just in case we do ever want to style this up. And then what I'll do is create a new file over here, and we'll call this online friends.vue. We'll spell it correctly. So this will display all of our different online friends. So let's create this by copying this and pasting in here. We'll change this to online, and we'll change all friends to online friends, and then we'll change the name of this as well to online friends. All right, so the next thing we need to do is nest these two new components inside the root component app.vue. So first of all, let's import them up here at the top. We'll say import all friends from, in quotations, / to say the current directory. Then it's all friends like so. We'll also import the other one. So we'll say import online friends. And this is going to be from / again, online friends. Okay, so we have those two components here. Now we need to register them inside this object. So we'll do a comma and we'll say online friends. And remember to shorten this thing where they're both the same name. This is the name we're giving this component locally inside this component. And this is this thing we've just imported. Because they're both the same value, we can just shorten it like so. And then we'll do all friends as well. Okay, so we have those two components registered. Now we just need to nest them up here. So first of all, we'll do all friends. And then underneath, we'll do online friends. Okay, cool. So now if we save this, hopefully we should see those two components right here in the browser. We do. So that's working so far. The next thing we want to do is actually display some data in these different components. So in this one, just the online friends, and in this one, all of the friends. So let's do all of the friends first of all. So let's create a data property. This is going to be called friends, and it will be, in fact, an array because we're going to have several different friends, and each friend will be an object. Now, I'm not going to write these out from scratch and bore you, so I'll just paste these in. There's 4 objects here in total. So each one has a name and an online status, which is a Boolean, either true or false. So we have Mario, who is online, Luigi, who isn't, Toad, who is, and Bowser, who isn't. So 4 friends in total, 2 of them are online. So since this is the component for all friends, what we want to do is output all of them into the template. So to do that, let us do a little return, and then we'll do a div tag right here. And this div tag is going to use v4 to cycle through these things right here. Remember, we used this directive v4 in the last chapter to cycle through data. So let's say, first of all, v4 friend in friends. So we're looking through the friends array right here, and we're referring to each item inside that array as a friend, so we can have access to this as we loop through those friend items. So for each one, let's just output the name. We'll do a span tag, and inside curly braces to output data, friend.name. Okay, so if we save this now, then we should see that output to the browser, Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Bowser. Now, we do get a squiggly line here. What's going on there? Well, Vue.js likes to keep track of all of the different tags that it outputs, okay? So right here, it's outputting different div tags for each different friend. And what it would like is a key value, okay? So you can see right here, elements in iteration expect to have a v-bind key value. So that's Vue saying, look, I want to identify each div as I put it out to the DOM. So I want to give this a key property, and that key property or attribute should have a unique value that I can identify this div with, or this element that I'm cycling through with. So the way we can get around this in this case is by just adding on the index. We've seen how we can do this in the previous tutorials. So we're saying get the index of each friend now in the array. So that's 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then what we can do is we can say vbind or just colon, because that's the same thing. And we'll bind to the key attribute. And that key is going to be the index. Okay, so now each div that is output is going to have its own index. That's just the way that Vue likes to work. It likes to give each div that's output using v-for a key attribute with a unique value. Now, it's not always going to be index. In some cases, it might be the ID property of a certain record that's stored in a database. We'll see that kind of thing later on. For now, the index is fine because they're all going to be unique. It's going to be 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so let's save this and view it again. Obviously, no changes. They're still being output to the browser. Cool. So now we've output all of the friends. Let's do the same kind of thing inside the online friends. So I'm just going to copy this stuff right here. In fact, we'll copy the whole friends array and we'll add that to the data right here. So paste it in. So now we can output the same things over here, but this time we only want to output the ones that are online. So first of all, let's copy this again because we still want to cycle through each one. So we'll do a v-for to say for each friend in friends, and we'll bind the index right here, output the friend name. But remember, we only want to output this friend name if that friend is online. So what we'll do is attach the directive v-if and set that equal to something. Now, we're going to set this equal to this property right here, friend.online. So friend.online, because if this property is true, it means they are online and this will show. If it's false, this thing, then they won't show. Okay, so let's save that and view it in a browser. And now we can see we only get Mario and Toad because only Mario and Toad have these true statuses for online. Okay, cool. So now we've done that. We've used this data in two separate components and we've output it dependent on their online status in this one. Now this is fine, but we've done this the really long way and we've defined the same set of data twice in two different places. Wouldn't it be better to instead define it once somewhere and then pass that one set of data to each one of these different components to use? Because if this data changes in the future, we only have to update it once in one place rather than in two places. So that's what we'll do. We'll define it in the root component in app.vue, and then we'll use something called props to pass down data into two different components, the online friends and the all friends, and then they can both use that data. So first of all, let's cut this data from here and save it. We'll also cut that data from here and save it. Then what we'll do is we'll head over to our roots component and we'll define that data over here underneath title. So now we have this friends property in the data for this root component. Okay, so then we need to somehow pass this data down into the all friends component and the online friends component. So how do we do that? Well, we attach the data as a prop to each of these different tags. So what we can do is use a bit of data binding because we're going to dynamically bind data, and we'll say we're going to pass down a prop called friends. Now this doesn't have to be called friends. right? Just because I've called this friends down here, you can call it, buddies or whatever you want. I'm calling it friends because I like to keep things consistent. So we're passing down a property here called friends. Now we need to pass through a value of this property. What is the value of this thing that we're sending down to all friends? Well, it's just going to be this thing right here, friends. So if we place that in here, we can do that because we've done some data binding. If we didn't do that, then it's just going to pass down this as a string. So we'd receive friends as a string as a prop. But since we're using data binding, we're saying we want this to be dynamic. So Vue is going to know to look for this friends property in the data. And then it's going to pass that down as this friends prop to this component. So I'd like to do the same thing to online friends. So paste that in there and save it. Okay, so now we're passing this data down. Do you think this will work? Well, no, it's not working just yet. Even if we refresh, we're not seeing that data output. So why then, if we've passed this data down as props, can we not access it inside these components? Well, there's two steps to passing down props. The first step is to actually pass it down, as we have done from the parent component. The next step is to receive it. We need to tell this component and this component that we're expecting props and we want to receive them inside here. So the way we do that is just by creating a props property inside the object. So underneath the name, let's say props, and this will be an array, and each position in that array will be a prop that we're expecting. Because we can pass multiple props down, it doesn't just have to be one prop, we can receive 2 or 3. So each one of the props that we receive will go in here as an element of that array. So this name has to match up to the name that we gave it right here, this thing. Not necessarily this thing right here, but this one right here where we decided to call it friends. So if we call this buddies and set it equal to friends here, then this would be buddies. All right. So now that we're receiving that prop down, if I save this, we should see in all friends, now we can use that data. Cool. So we're outputting it right here. Now, if we do the same thing over here, we'll do a props property, which is an array. And again, we're receiving the friends prop. Save that and view this in a browser. Now we see it working here as well. So that's how we send data down to child components. We can store it in a parent component up here. Then we can pass a prop down into the nested components like so, and then receive them by adding on a props property in the object and saying what prop that is. Then we have access to this, much like we would as if we defined it down here. Okay? Now, I did say that if we didn't add on this thing right here, this data binding, then we're just passing down this as a literal string. I want to show you what that does. So if I save this, and then if we just go here and just output friends, like so, and I'll comment out this stuff, so it's not interfering, like so, then if we save that, we should see over here, we just get the string friends because we pass down the literal string friends. So we have to use data binding here for this to work, to pass down actual data from our component.